Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Light Gate. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM from New Orleans. And welcome to Carnation Monday. The show is fully sponsored by the amazing folks over at Carnation. So let's give them a big thank you. So tonight, I am stepping in for Dolly. I am essentially Dolly for tonight. Preston, do you want to fill everybody in?
Yeah, Dolly will be back next week. We hope she's recovering, doing really well, and we're very excited for that. But Michelle will be covering Dolly's duties for tonight.
Happy to be here.
Okay, so I guess I will start then.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on The Light Gate. Can you believe it? It's episode 172. That's more than 3 years we've been going strong. So we're super happy and very delighted that you could join us tonight. Because of you, Mondays is that much funner. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Super excited about our guest tonight. He's a repeat guest, really awesome guy. I'll get to him in just a moment. But do let me say a quick hello to all you folks first. If you didn't get a chance to check out last week's episode, we did a Q&A. It was all kinds of fun. It was a little bit longer than normal because we had some extra time. So remember, all our shows are archived, and we've got a great guest coming up next week who, honestly, I can't remember who it was, but I know he's good. So we'll get there. So who do we have tonight? We got quite a few people in here. It's always nice to see these familiar names and always some new ones. And first in line is Stargazer. Hello, Stargazer. So glad you could make it. And we have Scarlet Fire too, who says, I am made of particles, but the wave is ever present as well. Quoted by me. Love that. Kaleidoscope Eye Guy from Panama City, Florida. Hello, we have Cherise. Love seeing all these familiar names. Augie Nost. Augie is a former guest at least twice and has his own really cool podcast. Og from UK. I think I got that right finally. Staying up late tonight all the way from the UK. Thanks so much. Truly appreciate that. I just love how we're reaching all over the world. Astrid Gooder. Good day. That sounds like Australia. Good day. I'm reading the accent there.
Yeah.
Karina Angel, hello. We have Dottie. Greetings, everyone. Love you, Dolly and Preston. Hope Dolly is doing and feeling well. She is. She is absolutely a happy camper. Hello, Owl Man. Thank you for joining us. Quite a few people in chat already. That's very, very cool. And who else do we got? You guys are active in chat, aren't you? Wow. Cherise, I remember My Favorite Martian. Oh, yeah. Did you watch My Favorite Martian? They're doing reruns. I loved that show.
It was funny. I liked it too.
Okay, we have Jude Vivier. Hello, Jude. And the Owl Man. Lots of people here today. Patsy, Nyla, Esme. Hi, Preston, Dolly, and Mike. And of course, Michelle is our co-host tonight. If I didn't introduce her, she introduced herself. We love Michelle.
Thank you. Love you too.
Namaste. Thank you so much. You are amazing. We appreciate your incredible generosity. It helps so much to support the show and really is so encouraging. Hello, Olivia and Texas Cacti and kinds of people. We have a wonderful donation from Olivia. Oh my goodness, Olivia. You are so kind, so generous. We truly appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We have the poetic poems. Astrid is from Australia. It's winter there. How weird is that?
It is, I know. My daughter lived up there. I couldn't get used to the difference in seasons.
I just can't imagine it.
Oh,
Oh, Og, thank you so much. It's very, very cool. Oh, Pink Possibly, who also has a really nice YouTube channel. Check it out. I think you can find that pretty easily. Jay Kirshenman and Daniel Nordine from Tennessee. Cindy Krause from mid-Missouri. Very cool. I think that's Ozark country, if I remember.
Ozarks. I like the Ozarks.
I like the name of it. Ogazan. Thank you, Ogazan. Really appreciate it. Always nice to see you here. Definitely appreciate your generosity. Jason Finch and Becky Sloan, and gotta love punk ass. We love punk ass.
Yeah. Nice.
Hope
Nice.
all are well. Yes.
Yes,
We are
yes.
well. Hope you are too. Hi, CJ. I'll try to be positive. Hey, I think that's a good idea. Jason Finch, hello. Astrid says, Michelle, so special. Yay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Who else do we got? Poetic Poems, well wishes to Dolly. Thank you. And Dolly is here in spirit. Okay, I better get going here. There's a lot of comments. I could be here for a while.
Yeah.
I love that, you guys. Beth
Yeah.
Noise, hello. Undead Jed.
You could do a show just on the chat room.
We have.
They're awesome
Actually-
and they're very unique. I love it.
Aurora Comedy Vids, D-Man, hello. And yeah, I think I will get going because I think I've covered just about everybody. If I didn't say your name, it's not because I don't love you. I do. I just skipped you accidentally. But we do have to get to our guest because he's patiently waiting in the green room. And I don't want to be a dork and keep him there forever. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about our guest. Very excited and delighted to have Mike on. He was a previous guest, Mike Ricksecker. He's the author of the award-winning Travels Through Time and Amazon bestsellers Portals to the Stars, A Walk in the Shadows, Alaska's Mysterious Triangle, as well as several historic paranormal books. I mean, he's done a lot. He has appeared on multiple television shows and programs, including History Channel's Ancient Aliens, which I did once, and boy, they were so nice to me. That is awesome. The Unexplained and the Unbelievable, Travel Channel's The Alaska Triangle. What a terrific show that was.
I enjoyed that show.
Yeah. Animal Planet's The Haunted, multiple series on Gaia TV, and more. Mike is the producer and director of the docuseries The Shadow Dimension, available on several streaming platforms, and produces additional full-length content on ancient wisdom, lost civilizations, UFOs, and the supernatural on his extensive YouTube channel. The links to his stuff are in the show notes, so check it out. Mike hosts the Connecting the Universe interactive class on his online learning platform, the Connected Universe Portal, and for more than 9 years has posted the Edge of the Rabbit Hole livestream show. He operates his own book publishing and video production company, Haunted Road Media, which represents a number of authors, and won the award for Excellence in Media in the Paranormal Field at the 2019 Shockfest Film Festival. That's very cool. He hosts the annual Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour. We're going to be talking about that, which is an exploration of Egypt's pyramids and temples for lost advanced technologies, the secrets of esoteric alchemy and ancient stargates. This should be interesting, Michelle. That stuff just interests me.
Yes. Oh, it's
They know a
phenomenal.
lot. All right, he's a native of Cleveland, a U.S. Air Force veteran with a background in intelligence and a degree in computer simulation programming. Geez, Mike, you wear a lot of hats.
I know.
He's been researching unexplained phenomena across the world for 30 years. Wow. Okay, let me just bring him on. There, here he is.
Yes, here we are.
Hello. Hello, Preston and Dolly for tonight.
Dolly for tonight. Thank you. Michelle, aka Dolly.
That's right. That's right. And I do hope Dolly's doing well and recovering well.
She is. She right now she just has a face for radio, so she doesn't really want to come on, and I get it.
I totally understand. Yeah.
Sorry, Dolly. I mean that in the most loving way. You know I love you. So yeah, Mike, thanks for coming back on.
Thanks for having me back. Yeah, because we were just, I think we were each on each other's shows earlier this spring. So yeah, thanks for having me back so quickly.
Hey, no problem. You've got such an extensive resume. I feel like we could do 100 shows and still keep going.
Oh, we probably could. Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing. So I don't know where you want to start. Maybe by introducing yourself a little bit for some of our new listeners, because our show has been growing.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Mike. I don't know.
Not Dolly.
Yeah, not Dolly.
Not Dolly. Yeah.
I don't know, because I mean, you read off pretty much my whole bio. So yes, I do all those things. I've been on all those shows. I keep really freaking busy with all of it, and then of course I have to make time to come on wonderful shows like yours.
Well, we appreciate it. Yeah, it's amazing how much work all this stuff takes. People have no idea. Just this weekly show alone.
A lot of work. It really is. Yeah, because I also have my own weekly show on top of all of those things. So it is a lot of work. And so, and I noticed that a lot of your viewers there are very generous with the super chats, which is wonderful because that helps to go and support all of this. It is a ton of work. So that's wonderful that you have a growing audience here.
Yeah. Well, we're very excited about it. We owe a lot to Michelle for putting us on and putting up with us.
I know a good thing when I see it.
We're pretty easy going.
You are. You guys are great.
Yeah, and Michelle's fantastic. I've been on her show before too, a few times. Yeah.
Yes. My God, the Wayback Machine. My God, I love it though. It was great. It was great.
Yeah.
Well received.
So you got a ton of books. You got a lot going on. I'm just going to flash the books across the screen real fast so people can get an idea of Walk in the Shadows. I know a lot of our listeners don't have video, so I'm going to name the titles here. Alaska's Mysterious Triangle, Portals to the Stars. This one, I really would like to hear more about this because I know your current work on that. Travels through time, inside the fourth dimension, time travel, and stacked time theory. Mike, you've got some really interesting things to talk about. Archive of the Connected Universe, Volume 1. So I suppose there's multiple volumes.
There will be, yes.
Ghosts and Legends of Oklahoma. Ooh, this one looks pretty scary, actually. The Inscription of Evil Times. Yikes.
Yeah, that one's a little ebook, yeah.
Campfire Tales, Ghostorian Case Files, Volume 1, Ghosts of Maryland, System of the Dead, Deadly Airs, Horrors from an Empty Chair. Sounds like you got some nice, scary stories.
Well, some of those, like this one, Mysteries of the Church of Darkness, Horseman, Empty Chair, Inscription of Evil Times, those are actually, they were little ebooks that I eventually put together as Ghostorian Case Files and ended up adding a few more stories to it. So yeah, Ghostorian Case Files is 10 years old now, and I just released that, an updated version of that, as well as audiobook for that now. So yeah.
Wow.
Cool. Yeah, audiobooks are getting hugely popular.
They are, yeah. So I've been trying to put some of my older stuff on audio, and that's a lot of work in and of itself too, to do all of that.
Tell me about it. I'm trying to get some of my publishers to put my older books on audio, and they're dragging their feet, and I don't know why, because audiobooks are the deal right now.
Yeah, well, to hire out voice talent, and I've done some voiceover work for other books as well, it can be really costly and expensive. So the publisher has to be able to say, okay, am I going to be able to have a good return on my investment for getting the audio production for that? Not only the voice talent, but also the production behind it as well, with the audio engineers and all that. So I do it myself. It's like I use my own voice. I've got my own little studio, and I just
I would do it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would do it myself, but I got roosters clucking in the background, and there's a lot of formatting stuff that is difficult to figure out. It's a bit of a learning curve there.
Yeah, what's interesting is when I do that, because I have the studio here. This is what I use for my podcast setup and all that on my YouTube channel. But when I actually do the audio books themselves, I actually go into the closet and all of the clothing provides great soundproofing. I'm not kidding.
That's true. It's true. You want everything to be just, I started out in an actual radio station, and when everything shut down for a while, because I had syndicated into New Orleans, we had our home had 3 feet thick walls, and the sound was so amazing. I never went back to the radio station.
Oh, that's great.
I'm like, no, I sounded like it was a tin can over there. It was ridiculous.
How do you get 3 foot thick walls, Michelle? I'm curious.
1872.
She lives in a castle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a really old house, big Gothic manor.
Yeah, I grew up in a house that was pretty much cardboard. You could hear people laugh across the other room.
Yeah.
6 kids, by the way, at 1,200 square feet.
Ooh.
I'm still a little traumatized.
Yeah.
I don't doubt it.
Okay. Well, I know you got a lot of stuff going on right now. So if you want to, wherever you want to start.
Yeah, we can start. Well, you were interested in the book Portals to the Stars, which is my deep dive into portals and stargates. I get into a lot of the history of ancient Egypt, where we find the Stargates in ancient Egypt, which is the yearly tour that we do. We're going back March 21st through April 2nd next year. So that's a yearly tour that we host. And then I also get into the connections back to Atlantis as well. So, that one, I can say this about all the books, it was a passion project. It was the second of my Connecting the Universe series. I started with Travels Through Time, which is my deep dive into the nature of time, time travel, dimensions, all that. And then the next step to take was the Stargates, which is, of course, a big focus of our tour. And that's also a major project that I'm working on right now, is the film for Stargates of ancient Egypt. And we're in the last stages right now. We need a little help with the licensing and things like that right now. So we've initiated just a really quick kind of, I call it like a flash Kickstarter campaign. It's just a little 3-week campaign. We're right in the middle of it right now. It's not even that big. It's like 2,500 or whatever for a Kickstarter, which it's not that much. So we're just trying to get a little bit of backing there, finish off this project, and hopefully have it out. I already have the distributor lined up and everything.
Wow.
And hopefully have that out there before the holidays would be wonderful.
That would be perfect.
Perfect.
Sounds like a lot of work. Make a film.
It is a lot of work. I did the Shadow Dimension docuseries. That came out about 5 years ago. And that's still running on like Tubi TV, Roku channel, and places like that, which is fantastic. And that was a 6-part series. So doing 6 episodes like that. And, I've been doing like the YouTube videos and things like that for many, many years. And, I have my book, A Walk in the Shadows, which is a deep dive into the nature of shadow people. And so, this was something that I wanted to do, not just the little YouTube videos. Let's actually, make a big production out of this. And then COVID hit, which kind of derailed a little bit of the production. But we were able to still get out to a couple of locations and really investigate these locations. The idea was to investigate locations that have reported shadow activity and also have reported portal activity, to see if there was a connection between that, were the shadow entities using the portals to move in and out of our dimension, or were they both appearing because of related energy there, that sort of stuff. And so that was kind of like, okay, we're just gonna we're gonna do this. We're gonna create this docu-series. And so that's been out there for a while. I've been in the process. I put it in the back burner. Excuse me. There's a follow-up to that's been coming, and people who have been following me are going to be like, Mike, we've been hearing about this for years. But it is. I'm actually a third of the way through post-production on it, but I put it on the back burner because, I've been doing all this work with Egypt and the tours and the Stargates, and then the book Portals to the Stars. And, my fans and following have had a bigger interest in that lately. So it's like, okay, we'll put Shadow Dimension on the back burner for now. I'll come back to it after the Stargates of Ancient Egypt film is done. And that is nearly done. I'm really in the last segment of that. I'm going to actually have the post production is actually going to be done this week, which is fantastic.
Congratulations.
I heard the sigh of relief there.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to have it done earlier this spring, but yeah, I mean, stuff happens and got busy. You might notice I travel a lot. So.
No, not at all.
A little bit jealous, but that's very awesome.
Oh yeah.
It all helps in this. We were just back there in Egypt in November, so a lot of that material filtered in here, and because I have so much material from there, I've been there 4 or 5 times now, so I have all of this material, and it's a matter of kind of like going through it all. Okay, what can I use? And sometimes I was kicking myself going through all of this footage because I was back in 2021. I had my good camera with me. Now this was just after COVID. Nobody was at any of the sites in Egypt. Like literally, we were at Luxor, and it was our little tour group that was there, and then another couple. That was it.
Wow,
that's beautiful.
It was wonderful.
That's kind of awesome, actually.
It was great. So I'm like getting all these wonderful photos and everything, and then I'm watching my camera footage go bounce, bounce, bounce. I'm like, oh, Michael, you have the whole temple's open to you, and you can't hold the dang camera steady.
You need one of those selfie sticks that you just walk around.
Yeah. Well, no, I had the bigger. It wasn't just my phone or anything. I had the bigger camera with me,
right.
And it was one of those. Actually, we were there, really like in the middle of summer. It was late June, early July. It was like 120 degrees, and we were dying out there. So it's me kind of bouncing around is I'm trying everything I can to do to not pass out.
It's hard.
So that's why anytime we do the Egypt tours now, it's in a much cooler. Cooler time, like November.
It's an emergency. I have to go in the pyramid right now. I'm gonna faint. Let me in.
I was there in August, like right in the middle of August.
Ooh.
That's
a hot time. Yeah,
it was ooh. Yeah. Even in the pyramid, it was all ooh.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
wasn't cool inside the pyramid.
It's because too many people go inside the pyramids. Like before we had all this tourism into the pyramids, like the Great Pyramid of Giza would say a nice 67 degrees, didn't matter the temperature outside or anything like that. But now you have all these people going inside the pyramids all day long. And in November, we were in there. It was the hottest I had ever felt it inside the Great Pyramid. And again, I've been in there in the middle of June, and it was the hottest I'd ever felt it inside the Great Pyramid. So, but they've really been ramping up on the tourism here the past few years. They've been putting in all this infrastructure, redoing all the roads, all this stuff. The gym just opened, so they've been, like quadrupling down tourism out there. Yeah.
Can I ask? Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, as long as they don't put a McDonald's in the pyramid, because I went to Carlsbad Caverns and there was a McDonald's at the bottom of Carlsbad Caverns.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God. No, but there's a Taco Bell across the street. So.
In Egypt. I was going to ask you what your thoughts were on all of these alleged structures and tubes and everything that are going on under the pyramid. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I know those guys. So, so I've done a lot of research into the technology, the SAR technology and all that. And basically, what we're looking at here, because when those first came out, you had immediately like Zahi saying, oh, it's fake. And then you had like people that were GPR experts, ground penetrating radar experts saying, well, GPR can't scan that, but it's not GPR. It's a satellite technology, and it's actually, and this is going to sound bizarre, but it's actually just doing a surface scan. And so when people say, what do you mean it's just scanning the surface? How in the world can it figure out stuff down there if it's doing a surface scan? Well, the scan that it's doing is it actually does a surface scan for micro vibrations from deeper underground. And they've proven this out on multiple very deep objects that they knew were there, like a lab in Italy that was 2 kilometers underground and things like this. So they already and they were able to prove this out.
What is this technology that they're using?
SAR, it's SAR. I forget exactly what it stands for. I think the A is aperture.
Is that like LiDAR? Because I've heard of that.
Yeah, but this is off of a satellite from space.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
there's
it's
a
the
lot of archaeology, I think, are using these satellites now, aren't they,
yeah.
to find hidden stuff in the
Mhm.
desert?
Yeah, exactly.
The
And they
same one?
right, yeah, they've used this same technology or very similar technology, basically looking for those micro vibrations from deep underground. And yeah, they're depending on the type of vibration, and everything can detect these large voids. And they've done this on known objects like the Osiris shaft that's right there on the Giza plateaus. Like we know the Osiris shaft is there, so there it is, showing up in the scan. And then, oh, wait a minute, there's other stuff under there too. So the Osiris shaft actually goes deeper than previously thought.
Hmm.
Wow.
Wow.
So do you suspect there's still lots of discoveries to be made around
There
there?
are one of the issues that looks like we're going to encounter here is there's a billionaire that has thrown a bunch of money right now, and I guess it's been approved, an Egyptian billionaire that is going to build a 15,000 seat sport and entertainment complex right on the Giza Plateau.
What?
So yeah,
Wow.
I know, sounds insane. Well, again,
Wow.
Yeah.
I mentioned before,
Yeah.
Egypt is quadrupling down on everything that's all their tourism. Well,
I can see that
right
though.
now,
I mean,
they run concerts and things like this all the time down at the Great Sphinx. I
Yes.
posted
Yeah.
a little video clip a couple of weeks ago
Yeah.
of the last time that we were at the Great Pyramid, and I was trying to talk about a vision I had while I was inside the pyramid. Kate, my wife, would put me into a trance, and I had this incredible vision. And here's this dog, one of the dogs that hangs out there on the Giza Plateau, that's walking back and forth on the pyramid right next to me and barking at the concert going on down by the Great Sphinx. So he's
Oh,
become really popular. So they're like, yes, let's put a stadium right there in the Giza Plateau. So that's going to shut down any
yeah.
kind of excavation or anything in that area.
okay, well, hold on a second. You just kind of skimmed past this vision you had.
Yeah.
I call it. It's
We
like,
went
wait
from
a
the
second.
trance to the dog.
Yeah,
That
just
sounds kind
forget
of
the trance.
interesting.
Let's talk
I'm
about the
just
dog.
saying.
Oh yeah, the visual was pretty incredible because with the intention that I set going into it, and we were inside the pyramid when we were doing this. And in our group, when we do these tours, gets 2 hours just ourselves inside the Great Pyramid. All the chambers are open up to us, which is incredible. So like the typical public tour is you get your ticket, you go up the Grand Gallery into the King's Chamber, back down, you're there 15 minutes, done. We've got 2 hours, everything's opened up. So we were inside the King's Chamber, and Kate put me into a trance. And I don't know where everybody, I guess everybody else in our group had gone off to some of the other, like the Queen's Chamber or the subterranean chamber, because Kate and I were in there on our own for quite a while. And so the intention I set was to see the Great Pyramid when it was in its full glory and what was going on. And so within this trance, I see the Great Pyramid, all the casing stones are on it. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. I see like this blue glow that's kind of emanating. It's basically, harnessing energy and kind of emanating across the land, which actually was providing protection for the people. And what I kept kind of hearing throughout this trance was that it was protecting the people, and from the sun and from other things. And I almost got this impression that it was protecting people back, like during the time that we had the last pole flip, which would have been like 40,000 years ago, which sounds crazy that it'd be that old. But there are those who believe that the pyramid is 25, 35, maybe even 60,000 years old. So it's
Mhm.
okay. That might sound a little crazy, but some people do believe that. The other thing I kept hearing over and over again in this trance was, it's broken, it's broken, it's broken, which it is now. I mean, even though it's huge and glorious and all that, Great Pyramid of Giza is a ruin, and they keep doing things to it that ruins it even more. Like we were talking about before, with all these people going in and out of the pyramid, it's made it hotter in there. So they have dehumidifiers in there. They've installed fans, and basically like there's a chunk out of the wall of the King's Chamber where they've inserted this huge fan to try to blow air and everything. It's like, you really
wrong.
out of the wall of
It's
King's Chamber. Okay.
it's so wrong.
Yeah, it is. It
On
is.
every level, it is. It is. Yeah. It's interesting because when they talk about, like, for eons, they would not admit that there was anything under the pyramid.
Mhm.
And then in the 70s, Dr. Zai Hawass did an interview, which basically he said there was something underneath.
Yeah.
And then they kind of like buried that interview, right, for a while. Then it's
Oh,
like,
yeah,
oh, hey,
and there's
wait, look, we got something under the pyramid. I'm like,
yeah, and there's supposed to be no
yeah.
chambers or anything under the Sphinx, but yet you can find photos of Zahi Hawass coming up out of this hole.
That's right. Nothing disappears on the internet.
No.
Yeah, no,
That's
exactly.
what I love about the Wayback Machine, because you can actually find it.
Yeah.
There's just a continuing and ongoing interest in all things Egyptian pyramids. It's fascinating that I think the whole world watches this area very closely.
They do, and there's been a lot of stories about there being a secret entrance on the east side of the Great Pyramid, and you can kind of see when you look at it. When you're there on the plateau, you can see where it would kind of run right under there, and of course, that kind of gets poo-pooed by the academics. But the Pyramid of Menkaure, the third pyramid, the small one that's there, they actually did find a secret entrance on the east side into the pyramid. So if there's one on that pyramid, well, what do you think about the one up the hill that we've been talking about for a long time now, about possibly having that same type of entrance?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not out of, what I don't understand is you look at the Sphinx, these things were all buried. At one time, there was only the top piece of the Great Pyramid. So, just because it's everything you see now at one time was under the sand, go down a little further. It's not unrealistic to think that there's still a lot more of a base.
Well, right now, I mean, what's exposed is the because there used to be a bunch of sand there, but they've cleared it off to the limestone bedrock. So you can see that these days. And actually, what's kind of interesting is you can see how part of that limestone bedrock is actually a part of the pyramid. Like some of these things that look like blocks aren't blocks, are part of the plateau, which is incredible. And there's actually in a couple of different spots right next to the Great Pyramid where you see these fossilized remains of ancient sea lions that are in the limestone.
Yeah, that's cool. That's crazy. That's crazy.
So what are your thoughts on how old it really is?
Much older. There was a study that came out earlier this year with some it was an erosion study on the Great Pyramid. They were putting that at 25,000 years. Again, the trance thing that I went into was if it was during the pole flip, that would be 40,000 years. My colleague Mohammed Ibrahim, he's an Egyptologist, he's been running the tours out of there for 25 years. He's thinking closer to 60. So it's
I kind of lean towards that. And when you consider just all the mathematical computation, I understand that the longitude, latitude is the speed of light for the Pyramid of Giza. You heard this?
Yeah.
I mean, how could they possibly know that unless this was to some degree an advanced civilization or advanced technology to some degree,
right? Which predated the dynastic Egyptians. And don't get me wrong, the dynastic Egyptians were amazing. They did some miraculous things, but when you look at other pyramids that were built by the dynastic Egyptians, a lot of them were mud brick, and they're all falling apart and they're a ruin now. You might have a couple of little blocks within it, and then all this mud brick, and now they're in ruins. And you compare that to the Great Pyramid and the Pyramid of Khafre and these other ones, and you're like, wait a minute. So the newer Egyptians, the more modern ones, are building things that are far, far inferior to, the big, giant Great Pyramid, which, you look at our technology, we've continued to advance and get better. I grew up on a Commodore 64, which is, so, what I'm using here today to connect to this show is, much superior. So, and that's just in 40 years time. 40 sometimes, we're dating ourselves here. So you're going to tell me that Egyptians, a couple that are supposed to be only a couple hundred years, a little bit further down the line, made something far inferior. Doesn't make sense. And if you look at some of these, surviving ones that are smaller, they're like the Pyramid of Unas at Saqqara, loaded with hieroglyphs,
Yeah.
and which is gorgeous. It's amazing.
Mhm.
But the pyramid itself is totally falling apart. It's in an absolute ruin.
Yeah.
Yet the other, like Great Pyramid, Khafre Pyramid, they don't have any of the hieroglyphs, which the dynastics covered everything that they built in the hieroglyphs, and yet these giant pyramids don't have that. So you can just tell with your own eyes that these were built by somebody completely different.
Wow.
But do you think that the pyramid was ever a tomb?
No.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it had some other functionality. To me, the smoking gun is the queen's chamber. I mean, you've got this niche curved into the side. They're
Yes.
about 15 feet tall. And it's corbelled. It has a corbelled structure to it. And the academics try to say, well, there's some sort of statue or idol that was standing in there. And it's like, okay, well, sure, if there was one, they would build around. How did somebody get it out if it was there? And then also, what was the function of the passage going off the back of the thing another 90 meters into the pyramid? And then when we look at the back of this thing, it's burnt. There's all these scorch marks. The stone is partially melted.
See exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't make much sense to me.
No.
And the Great Pyramid is attributed to Khufu, and basically because of the bottom of the dream, and it's gone now, but an old sketch of the dream stele from the Sphinx, and so they're like, well, yeah, we think because of this thing that is now gone. And then we know Howard Weiss kind of painted Khufu's cartouche up in there in one of the quote unquote relieving chambers. But the only you think, Khufu built this whole huge Great Pyramid, right? So there should be all kinds of monumental statues and things like this in his honor. No. The only the only thing that we have of Khufu is this little 2-inch. It's in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. This little 2-inch statue like this, and that's it.
Pretty insignificant on considering this is the guy who was supposed to have built this monumental, wonder of the ancient world.
And no.
Well, Dolly talks about the pyramid being a giant energy generator. And I've heard this from a number of people, actually.
Yeah. Well,
It had the copper casing on top, right?
Yeah, I mean, Christopher Dunn has the idea of the Giza power plant, which a lot of it makes sense. And when you're actually inside there and you're looking at the construction of it, you do have the feeling that this was like some sort of machine.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was generating like they weren't lighting up light bulbs and powering computers and things like this.
No.
I think the energy more had something to do with one, raising the consciousness of the people. Secondly, the most important thing to the ancient Egyptians or whoever they were that built this would have been the crops. Because such a dry, arid climate, you only have a very, very short period of time to actually grow crops. So the Nile inundation season was very, very important to them. When the Nile would flood and all the rich black soil would come down the Nile.
All the silt, yeah.
Yep, and they plant the crops and they grow and all that. So the most important thing to them is going to be the crops. So wouldn't it make sense? And it has been proven that energy can improve crop production. So if you had this big energy generator right there, pushing this energy out across the land, you could increase the yield and size and everything of your crops. So I think it had a lot more to do with that than like flipping a light switch or something.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we've never tried to duplicate building the Great Pyramid. I don't think we could, but
there was a Japanese team who tried some years ago. And they couldn't do it. They made something much smaller. They're like, well, yeah, we can't do it, but here's a little one.
Yeah.
Not the same.
Monumental feat there. And let's face it, we all know that like many ancient cultures, Egyptians, they just repurposed and took over what was there, made it their own,
Yeah.
scrubbed everything else out. And if it
Ramses,
was,
yeah, Ramses was notorious for that. He's made it difficult to be able to date a lot of things in Egypt because we know that he was going around scraping off other people's cartouches and putting his
oh,
own on
Ramses.
there. And yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
Ramses.
they definitely
Yeah.
repurposed. I mentioned
Yeah.
the pyramid of Unas.
Yes.
Well, the alabaster walls inside the chamber where there's this coffer. Well, you can see that the alabaster was repurposed. If you turn the lights off and you shine the flashlight the right way, you see this other text that had been previously carved into the alabaster.
Yeah. That's
Crazy.
surprising.
Wow.
In all fairness to Ramses, he ruled for like 60 years. So I guess at some point you're
Oh,
going
he
to.
lived into his 90s.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why Egypt fell into one of those kind of dark ages after him because he outlived his heirs.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So when he died, they're like, okay, what do we do with Egypt? So,
no, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah, a friend of mine had the mummy of Ramses the Third, I believe.
Okay.
Had the mummy, like owned the mummy?
Yeah, he bought out. I mean, Victorian times, everything got pillaged out of Egypt, and they ended up in a museum in Niagara Falls, Canada, which was an old museum of oddities and things like that. So he and partners purchased it because they were taking this museum down. That was it. So he ended up with all this stuff. There were 8 mummies. And
God,
they 5 of them went, I think 5 or 6 went to the museum in Atlanta. So they didn't realize they had a royal mummy, with the arms out. They didn't realize they had a royal mummy.
Okay.
So when Atlanta, essentially the museum there contacted Dr. Zahi Hawass and said, we think we've got one of your mummies. And just from a photo, Zahi Hawass he knew that he goes, I know the Ramses family had a certain look about him in their features.
Oh yeah.
And they've been looking for him. And he got, as the story goes, the royal welcome home, and he got a passport issued to him. And it was, So, and so it was
insane.
When you go to the Civilization Museum there, now that's where all the royal mummies are kept, is in the Civilization Museum. They won't let you take any photos or anything like that. There was the one year that I was there was a group of schoolgirls down in there, and there was a wall that was behind them, and they're all trying to take a selfie with this blank wall behind them, and the guards were right on them. They were like, you take that. They went over to their teacher, get this off the phone. It's like there were no mummies in the photo. It was just the girls with the wall. But yeah, what's interesting about Ramses II is he had red hair. When you think of Egyptians, you don't think of red hair, but he did. And also when you look at the mummy, you're looking at this guy in the red hair, and he had a hooked nose. So he was not like your traditional, like ancient Egyptian ethnicity. So it's kind of one of those things where a lot of these kings kind of, when they came into power, they weren't necessarily like from there. There was a cross-pollination of peoples from other areas.
Yeah. Well, Seti was a general besides that, wasn't he?
Yeah.
When he took over the throne. It's fascinating history.
Yeah, and that's another challenge too, because Seti and again Ramses took over a lot of Seti's buildings and put his mark on it and everything. And Ramses, we don't really know what truly happened in history, because Ramses is talking about this big battle that he won, and of course he single-handedly killed thousands of enemy soldiers just by all of himself.
The stories always went to glamorize and to build up, of course, the pharaoh. But
So regarding this book, what is the main theme? What are you exploring here in this book? Portals to the Stars.
Yeah, Portals to the Stars has become it's kind of the crux of my presentation that I do on the interdimensional universe. But Portals to the Stars, I started off by getting into what exactly is a portal, what's the energy behind these things, and even NASA has shown us when people think of portals, they're like, oh, this is kind of like woo pseudoscience sort of thing. But even NASA has admitted, yes, we do have portals out in space. They call them X points. So I dive into all of the kind of science aspect of what actually a portal is, where we find them occurring in nature, and not just out there in space, but how we can find them here on the ground, out in the wilderness, in the skies, all this sort of thing. And then when I get into the Stargates aspect, it's okay, this is all the portals, how different beings from other dimensions would be using those. And if you do have an intelligent species, human or otherwise, using a portal to their own will, to their own devices, to be able to do what they want with it, well, now you have a Stargate. This is something that they can actually operate and go to, whether it's somewhere else in the cosmos, somewhere else here on Earth, to another dimension, another point in time, all of these different possibilities. And so I dive into all that, and then I get into where you actually find these Stargates. Not only I do touch on other areas of the world, but mostly where we find them in ancient Egypt.
Well, that's interesting, because there are pyramids, we know, all over the world, and a lot more than most people realize, I think.
Yeah, they're
So
everywhere.
is that connected to all these other pyramids, in terms of portals and
Well,
light gates and all of that?
Yeah, you see a lot of similarities between like the step pyramid at Saqqara and the pyramid at Chichen Itza. Just a couple of examples. You actually find a number of different variations of step pyramids all across the world. You find a lot of this similar symbolism between like the handbags, the pine cones, the spirals, the T shapes. Like every culture in the world had these different these symbols like this, and they all called them the same thing. So there was definitely a connection between all of these cultures.
Sorry, my dog is going crazy here. It's thundering.
Poor baby. Mike, do you think that they were using some of these Stargates to go from to different parts of the world? This is why we see all of these similarities in architecture and symbolism.
Yeah, I think so. And we even find like an Elephantine Island, which is supposed to be a home of one of these Stargates that you have in the temple of Satet. Well, you have Satet putting this necklace with an amulet on the king to be like a protective item to go into the Holy of Holies, and there's Satet wearing a Mayan headdress. It's like, why is Satet wearing a Mayan headdress? Was this a place that they were visiting in the Stargate up the hill, which is possible? And if that's true, because the ancient Egyptian culture and the Mayan cultures were at two different points in time, well, not only would they have been traversing the planet, but they would also have been traversing time as well, which is kind of interesting to think about.
Yeah, that
But
is.
they just don't teach this stuff in school, do they?
Not at all. No, I have a cousin who's a school teacher, and she keeps saying, I need to get you into the class to talk to my kids. I'm like, hey, I'd be willing to do it.
But you still have a job, I wonder. And I'm not being facetious, but I mean, there's this narrative, and I think how well received would it be to just kind of throw a wrench into the curriculum, even if it's for an hour.
Yeah, and that's one of the problems that we keep running into is there is a certain narrative that they want to adhere to, and right now with the tourism peaking out there in Egypt, it's like they don't want to mess with that because this is the narrative that keeps bringing people in. And to me, it's silly because it's like if you add some other intrigue and mystery to it, and the fact that it could possibly be older, I think that's going to bring more people out. But there's also pride and ego that comes into this. You start saying that it was a culture that was older that built the pyramids and all this sort of thing. That they're like, no, it was Egyptians. Well, okay, they were whoever lived there before who you're calling the dynastic Egyptians. They still would have been from there. Just like I live out here in Ohio. We have what's known as the Hopewell culture that built all these different mounds and all these other things, Great Circle earthworks and stuff. So these were they would have been what we would call Native Americans. They don't call them that. They call them the Hopewell culture. Well, Hopewell was the name of the farmer whose land this stuff was found on or whatever. Because the more recent ones, like the I don't know, like the Chippewa and Pawnee and all these other ones, it wasn't them. It was a culture that was much older, but it still would have been like their ancestors. So they still take some ownership to it. So I think the same thing with Egypt. It's like, okay, even if it wasn't the dynastic Egyptians and another culture that was before, like what do you want to call them, the Atlanteans, or a lot of times we call them the pre-Diluvians, the people that existed before the flood. It's like you're still the survivors of that culture, so you can still take ownership of it.
Yeah. Preston?
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating stuff because it reminds me of the fact that there was reports of giants on our Earth back around this time too.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's a bit of a tangent there, but I wonder about it because, as I recall, that there were some hieroglyphs which showed short Egyptians, presumably ancient Egyptians, and some ones that were like 3 times their height.
Yeah. When you look at some of the depictions of what we call the gods, they called them the netters, or really like forces of nature. But yeah, they were like, those beings were like this tall, and then here's the human king down here, right? So were they taller giants? I mean, you have almost every ancient culture on the planet talking about giants roaming the earth. And when I was doing my research for Alaska's Mysterious Triangle, I found this old manuscript from it was a 500-page handwritten manuscript of an Inuit elder who was basically trying to preserve his culture's history. And so because he saw the tide was turning up there in Alaska, the English are coming in, we're going to lose our culture. He's writing it all down, and some of these tales that he had written down about the giants were fascinating, about how they had crossed over from Siberia and they're begatting with the women, and all that sort of thing. And just kind of the way he described it, I was like reading this, I'm like, wait a minute, this is like eerily similar to the Nephilim stories that we find in several cultures in the Middle East. What are these stories doing up here?
Yeah, which are tied to them being ET as well.
Yeah.
So maybe, because I've heard that before, that the ancient Egyptians had a direct relationship, an open official contact with extraterrestrials.
What's interesting is when you look at some of the depictions of the ancient Egyptians, you'll see kind of like regular, beige sort of, that's earth color. Then you'll see the green. Well, this is the afterlife color. And then you'll see the blue. Well, this is basically the extraterrestrial color. These are the beings that are coming from the cosmos. So you see these different variations of beings.
That's fascinating. When you go back just for a moment to giants, the Lovelock giants, which were all red hair.
Right. Yeah.
As well.
That's right. I forgot it.
Yeah.
Red haired giants. Yep.
Yeah, and you do find that that sort of
fingers
story,
as well.
Right, 6 fingers, red hair, and that sort of thing with giants in different parts of the world. So that's a similar characteristic.
Maybe they built the pyramids.
I mean, it's possible.
They were big enough.
Yeah.
There's depictions of it, though, isn't there, Mike? Like, there's actual etchings and stuff of that.
Well, you don't find any record of, and that's another thing about ancient Egypt. For a culture that is supposed to have built the things, you'd think they would be bragging about having built them. Like, there's no record whatsoever of this is the Great Pyramid being built. No,
well, that's maybe because there was a pole tilt and everything was wiped out except for that, which actually it's almost a library in a way of looking at it, with the knowledge that's built into it in terms of the speed of light and the sacred geometry, and the way it points to Orion, or depicts the Orion star cluster, I guess.
Yeah, it's the Orion belt stars that the 3 main pyramids on the Giza Plateau line up to.
It's like they were trying to tell us something.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There was definitely those alignments. We have the alignment of the Sphinx as well. And when it comes to the dynastic Egyptians and their smaller pyramids, I think what they were doing was, you're repopulating the land, all that after the cataclysm, and they're encountering these huge pyramids And it's human nature. You want to replicate something that you're really impressed with. Well, that pyramid is amazing. I would love to build something similar and maybe be buried in it, that sort of thing.
But
And
emulated.
to emulate it, yeah, but they
Yeah.
couldn't build it as big as that. So we're going to build
Yeah.
these smaller ones, and they end up falling apart over the millennia. But yeah, I think that's what
You'd think we could build it, but apparently not. And how tall is the Great Pyramid compared to the tall structures we have?
Well, the Great Pyramid of Giza was the tallest building in the world until the Eiffel Tower was built.
All right. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So if you think about it, the Eiffel Tower was built 150 years ago.
Yeah.
So the Great Pyramid of Giza was the tallest building in the world up until just that time.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I never would have made that correlation. I've been to both within a week apart. It never dawned on me that one was taller.
Given the choice, I think I'd pick the pyramids over the Eiffel Tower in terms
I would have thought, yeah.
destination.
Well, actually, and I've done this, is go to Paris on the way to Egypt, because if you just go straight from the United States to Egypt, that's a long flight. And I've done
I did go to Paris. Yeah. Then I went to Egypt.
Yep.
Then I went to Greece and I went to Egypt. Then I bounced back. I just didn't make up my mind where I wanted to be. But no, it's so interesting when you look at and you factor in all the similarities all over the world, and you try to figure out, okay, how did it all get here? So here's a theory that I'd like to get your take on.
Okay.
Atlantis. Many people thought it was one place. Many other researchers are leaning to the fact that it was a civilization, but that they were all over the place.
Well, Plato very distinctly says in his text that it was a worldwide civilization, that it spread across the globe, and Egypt was a part of Atlantis. So people focus on the rings, but that was basically the capital city of this greater civilization. And so it's interesting because again, the academics kind of just throw that out. They don't even talk about it. They don't even think about it. They try to say it was a contemporary story, and it was probably something like the explosion of the volcano on Santorini. Right. Yeah. Well, for one, Santorini was not contemporary to Plato. The explosion of the volcano there on Santorini happened 1,000 years before Plato. It'd be like me coming along and say, in my writing, saying that the Battle of Hastings was contemporary to me.
Yes. I've been to Santorini. I've been in the vault. I went down into the volcano. It's still active for sure. But when you factor it in, because I went to Egypt right after that. See, I kind of hobnobbed around, and when you look at it, it's just you realize it's no, it can't be. The whole setup of it didn't make any sense.
Yeah, and it doesn't fit the description. Because it talks about Atlantis was beyond the Pillar of Hercules. Well, that's basically the Strait of Gibraltar. So it's out there in the Atlantic. So the story of Atlantis actually comes from Egypt. Plato is just retelling the story because there were no other earlier surviving texts. And the story comes from his great uncle Solon, who was a Greek philosopher. He went on a pilgrimage to Egypt, and he was at the different temples there in Sais and Heliopolis, talking with the priests there. And Solon visited there 600 BC. And the priests there, well, Solon was basically going on telling them about the last great cataclysm, the flood. And the priests there are actually laughing at him and they're basically saying, "You Greeks are but children. There have been many cataclysms, and we have survived them all as the Egyptians, and we are kept the records, and we're telling you." And when they got to actually what the Greeks call Atlantis, which the Egyptians called the homeland of the primeval ones, the priest told them that it happened 9,000 years ago. Now they're in 600 BC. 9,000 years before that, 9,600 BC. So that's 11,600 years ago. That's the end of the Younger Dryas era. So which Yeah, so it lines up perfectly. Now, Plato had no idea about the Younger Dryas era or anything like that. He's just recounting the story that was passed down, but it lines up perfectly with the end of the Younger Dryas.
Well, if you talk to Michael Cremo, I mean, he leaves no doubt that there were previous iterations of advanced civilization on this planet, and there's oral tradition among the Australian Aborigines, who we know are a very old culture. And they talked about how at one time the stars were in different positions.
Oh, yeah.
The earth tilted, oceans came and went, and mountains rose and fall, and everything was completely different.
Yeah,
they actually survived one of these apparent pole tilts.
Yeah, you have cultures all over the world that talk about these great cataclysms, that talk about the flood. Almost every ancient culture on Earth has what people call a flood myth. Well, it's like, how many different cultures have to say that they survived a great flood before it's no longer a myth? There might be some, other storytelling elements that are put on top of it, but dang it, the flood happened. We like in the American Southwest, like the ancient Hopi and Zuni. You go to like Montezuma's Well there. The fascinating story that comes out of that is when the flood happened, the ant people helped the humans go underground, survive the waters, and then when everything receded and the earth was good again, they let the humans out and they've repopulated the area. So you can believe what you want about the ant people and who exactly they were, were they these mantoid beings and creatures? Did they actually take them into another dimension? We can go down that road as much as we want. But basically something happened where the humans survived this cataclysm, and then the survivors rebuilt their civilization.
They did the same thing in Peru. We were just talking about this last week, Preston, where reptilians took the locals underground, cared for them, and educated them. And now they actually have a statue of a reptilian in the town.
But there's got to be a way at some point to find out the truth. We might not know until we get to the other side and maybe look at the Akashic records or something. Yeah. But it's clear that our history as we know it is not accurate.
Yeah. Well, and that's some of the work that my wife, Kate, and I are doing. She's, you would call an intuitive regressionist. She does, a lot of, QHHT work and things like that. And she'll take people into their past lives. And on occasion, you have these incredible past lives that people report, like being in, they might not necessarily even call it Atlantis, but being these super, super, ancient worlds or civilizations that predated all of that, and it's incredible some of the things that come out of that.
It's exciting. I think we've just been conditioned so much to fear different things, or to all of these assumptions. People think of reptilians and it's like, oh my God, they just eat you. Well, maybe there are some that do. I won't say. I've actually never come up right face to face with one, but when you start looking at, we're talking about how the Egyptians would emulate. If you look all over the world and you see, especially in South America, and you look at the serpent, architecture, and that comes from somewhere, and they revered these beings enough to emulate them and put them everywhere.
Yeah, the serpent is the ancient symbol for energy. We see this all over the world. Depicted in a number of different forms, but always associated with energy, or the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, which is an ancient symbol for recycling and renewing. So, and right there in that symbolism, they're telling us, yeah, sure, they put it sometimes on the tomb of a king or whatever. So yeah, they want their life to be recycled and renewed, but they would do that with with nature, with kings, with their civilization, with the universe. So we can just you just scale it up. Our solar system was born out of another. Our galaxy was born out of another. Our universe.
Know where you're going.
See where you're going.
Yeah, see where you're going.
Nope. Yeah, it was born out of another. Now it doesn't reform exactly the same, but yeah, it's this constant cycle again and again and again.
Yeah.
So that whole Big Bang, and that's kind of something I show within Portals to the Stars, is that they may not have called it the Big Bang, but where that snake and where the head and tail meet on the snake, that's the beginning and end of the universe. So the death of one universe is the beginning of the other.
Yeah, Ouroboros.
Yep.
Yeah. Right.
That one. So interesting. I mean, there's just so much to learn. I feel like we're only beginning to understand about the Great Pyramid and what's going on there. And the idea, I think, has been discarded that it was a tomb, even by mainstream Egyptologists. Would you say that that's a fair statement? Or are they still clinging to that?
Most traditional Egyptologists are still claiming that it was a tomb. Again, no body was ever found in there. It's just totally nonsensical. That I mean, just to build that thing in the amount of time that they're trying to say it would be built. I mean, you'd have to have thousands and thousands and thousands of people working on this thing 24/7, and you still wouldn't have it completed in, what was it, like 20 or 25 years? Yeah. It just doesn't add up. And
it's a lot of work for just a tomb.
And it doesn't explain the so many of the other things, like the architecture of the Grand Gallery, the antechamber. But nobody ever talks about the antechamber between the Grand Gallery and the King's Chamber. And it is just the way it's designed. You have like this single block. As you walk into this thing, you have to duck down under these things, and then you have this block that basically wraps around another part of it that goes upward. So it's almost like, I don't know, like it almost looks like a chair, sort of, without the seat bottom. And then you have these kind of half tubes that are drilled straight down through the thing. And it's like, okay, what I couldn't tell you what it was used for, but it had some sort of functionality to it that just this wasn't for burying somebody in there. And then what's the deal with the Queen's Chamber and the subterranean chamber under that? All these different again with that niche that's in the side. There was no queen. In fact, there was never a box found in the what they call the Queen's Chamber. So it's not like the queen was buried there or something.
There's nothing in there.
There was nothing in there.
Well, there may have been stuff that was taken long ago, right?
They came across just recently here, rediscovered some years back, artifacts that were retrieved from the Queen's Chamber. These little pieces of wood. There was a copper hook and then a diorite ball. The wood, when they carbon dated that, was actually a little bit older than the date that they give for the pyramid.
Okay.
So
that's a thing.
that's kind of a thing.
So when you go into the Great Pyramid and all these tunnels, how long does it take to get in? How long are these tunnels? Does it go to the bottom? I mean, is it like
the subterranean chamber goes all the way under the pyramid. I mean, it's within the limestone bedrock, so you're under all of that.
Yeah, but I mean, how long is this walkway or this corridor? Is it 100 feet? 200?
I mean, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head.
That's pretty substantial, though.
Yeah. I mean, they're long. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What's interesting is the passage to get down to the subterranean chamber, which is actually the main entrance that goes from the subterranean chamber all the way out to the side of the pyramid. Now, we don't use that main entrance. We use what they call the robber's entrance, which is 1,000 years ago. They were trying to get into the Great Pyramid back when it still had its casing stones, and so they were doing things like using vinegar explosives to blow through the thing. Somehow, so this entrance is going into the pyramid, and somehow they knew at the right precise moment to curve their tunnel to meet right where the Grand Gallery comes down, because there's a little extension off the Grand Gallery that meets in this spot with the passage that goes down to the subterranean chamber. There's this old stone plug that's there as well. Somehow they knew how to curve their tunnel to meet this spot precisely. So it's like, did they have some sort of knowledge of where this was supposed to be? They have a map.
Mhm.
Some people say, well, maybe they came from the inside out. And it's like, well, I don't quite believe that one, because where would they have put all their debris?
Yes,
Um,
yes,
so yeah, there's all these mysteries about this thing.
yes.
Is it all open to the public? Every inch of this?
No. The public ticket is basically go in the Robbers entrance, up the Grand Gallery, into the King's Chamber, and then back out. And so you get like a 15-minute tour, 15, 20 minutes. When you come with us, we get 2 hours, just our group inside the Great Pyramid. All the chambers are opened up to us, so you can get into the Queen's Chamber, you can get down to the Southern Chamber, all that. Yeah.
Mm.
Wow. Well, there's encouragement for people to go along with you. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a wonderful perk. Yeah.
Now, are these skinny little corridors? Because people get claustrophobic, or are they wide?
I mean, the Grand Gallery is huge. It's just massive. So in the King's Chamber is pretty big. The Queen's Chamber, you do have to kind of scrunch down a little bit, and then you're in there. The one that's a little bit tighter is the tunnel that goes down to the subterranean chamber.
Yeah, that's definitely tight.
Do you have to bring your own flashlights, or is it?
It's lit. It's lit. You don't have to bring your own flashlight.
Yeah. I just read recently, and I don't know if you've heard anything about this, that it's hypothesized that there's actually a canyon deeper than the Grand Canyon under the Giza Plateau.
I mean, I don't know about that. I mean, the scans that came out of there last spring, as far as like the different structures that are supposed to be under there and all that. I mean, that's pretty big in and of itself.
Yes.
So I don't know about something bigger than the Grand Canyon down there. I mean, wouldn't
that's specifically how they said it. Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't that have swallowed up the whole plateau?
Yeah, you would think
about that.
It's way beneath, though, way down. So I don't know. Interesting. I'll try to find the article.
Yeah.
It sort of kind of went through the feed, and I went, It's just something that sticks in your mind because it's a little bit out there. But I just thought I'd ask if you heard anything about it. Since
no. I mean, the scans that came out last year are kind of controversial enough.
Yeah.
So, but what's interesting about that, because a lot of people throw out there, well, it's too deep. It's under the water table and all that sort of thing. It's like, if you look at what the ancient Egyptians did, or whoever may have predated them. The Nile River used to be much closer to the pyramids than it is now. Now it's like miles away, but it used to be a lot closer against there, which means the water table would have been even like higher back then. So that means it would have had a lot more trouble with water. Well, we know they dug all kinds of shafts through there, like the Osiris shaft today, even with the Nile River so far away these days, you can't get to the very bottom of it because the bottom is filled with water. Well, the ancient Egyptians weren't down there chiseling in water to build this thing. So they had some sort of water diversion system to be able to, build these structures under there, to be able to build these shafts. And there are shafts and tunnels and everything that pockmark the entire plateau. So they had some sort of water diversion system. So is that structure, that huge structure under the pyramids, the water diversion system that they funneled the water in there? I don't know. We have to get in there and see what's going on.
Well, you talk about water. There was the name eludes me, but I had someone on my show early years who had spent years doing research with a group of people. These are some academic people who actually stated that they believed that the pyramids were a large water pump.
I've seen that too. Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, I don't know about the pyramids themselves being
but the Great
a water
Pyramid.
pump. No, I've seen that, and I don't know about it being a water pump.
Yeah.
It's interesting, but you also have the idea that it was a power plant and all these other things. So
Sure.
I mean, the theories are interesting, and so you read through them. It's like, okay, some valid points are made. We're probably all wrong. It was probably something even grander and more magnificent, and we're probably all wrong. But the ideas are interesting for sure, and it's food for thought as far as what was really going on.
One thing we do know is, it being so old, people must have known about this forever. So probably what we see and know about has been stripped. What I'm saying is people have been going in there for a long time, probably been stripping all the artifacts and everything. that has anything to do with this for centuries.
Yeah. Well, you go into the Grand Gallery and you can see, there's kind of slats, up and down the sides of this thing. Chris Dunn says that, it was where these, resonators would have been. Well, maybe, or it could have been something else, but something was there and it's gone now for sure. Yeah, with the water, you look at a place like the Osirion, which is back behind the Temple of Seti at Abydos. It's underground. It's of course, the traditional academics try to say it's contemporary to the Temple of Seti, but you can tell it's far older. The type of architecture that is there it reminds me of like the Valley Temple there by the Sphinx, and it is even the archaeologist that's been working at this place since 1986 is like, yeah, we're looking really at the top of a 5-story building here. It goes down at least another 50 feet, this whole structure, but they can't get to it because it just constantly fills with water again and again. So you can only really get to the top of this thing, and the whole rest of it, whatever's down there, is completely flooded out. So again, what were the ancient Egyptians doing to divert the water to be able to build something like this?
I agree.
Too bad the Library of Alexandria was burned down, because I bet they had some information on this.
They had a lot of information about that. Yeah, there's some surviving documents from there because they had the sister library, but so much for out. We lost a lot with that.
Can we say now that it's being used a lot for consciousness work with the resonance and such? You so much talk about that.
Yeah, well, and that's one of my ideas about the Great Pyramid. If it is there was even a scientific team 8 or 9 years ago now that did come out and publish and say that, the Great Pyramid of Giza is harnessing energy from the ground and storing it within its chambers. And so, the idea of the energy that is there, one of the things that I've thrown out there, in addition to helping the crops and all that, is that was raising consciousness of the people, to know that the people were happier, you felt good, and all of that. So, and that was a big part of even the dynastic Egyptian culture, was this raising of consciousness. Like you go into the temples, and this is true of pretty much every temple. When you walk in somewhere, you're going to cross over a rose granite threshold. It could be an entire gateway. It could just be, a block.
Rose granite. That sounds actually really beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It is. But it's also made of about 55 to 60% quartz. And when you cross over this, the idea is that when you cross over, it was clearing your energy before you entered the temple, so that your energy was pure. It was like being reborn before you went into the temple. So the ancient Egyptians were all about your consciousness and your own personal energy.
Well, I think you might be onto something there, because you described your own kind of mystical experience, and I know when we had Barbara Lamb on the show, she went there and she described another really amazing, very personal mystical experience at the Great Pyramid. So maybe that's something where people can go to, kind of like an oracle type of deal.
Yeah, you can.
Insight. Spiritual insight.
Yep. I've been there where people have done, breath work inside the King's Chamber, and they've had all kinds of experiences. My colleague Freddie Silva's talked about being within there in the King's Chamber, and the lights went out, and his groups that he would do like attunements on different ancient locations, and they were seeing these light white beams coming out of the walls. You had Paul Brunton back in the 1930s talking about witnessing shadows and things like this within the Great Pyramid. So, people have experiences there.
Do you think it's because of the shape? How we went back into the 70s of the pyramid power, and people were building little pyramid houses, and you can sharpen your razor blades in pyramids, and people still
keep vegetables fresh and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. There is definitely something to be said for that. You have that wide base, and you're talking about material. It's made of limestone. There's granite. There's granite within it. So you're talking about material that can harness energy. So you have this wide base, and it's concentrating up to the top. And I forget who it was. It was decades ago, maybe 100 years ago, whenever the heck it was.
Yeah.
And they had the
It's the 70s.
whatever it was. Yeah.
Yeah. You're probably just a youngster back then, Mike.
Yeah, I was young back in the 70s. But they went up to the top of the pyramid. They had a guide with them, and I forget exactly what they did at the very top. But and all of a sudden there was like this spark that came out of the top of the pyramid, scared the guide. He was like, "No, you guys are doing witchcraft. You need to get out of here."
Crazy.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Have there been any studies? I'm just kind of spitballing here on the acoustics that go on.
Yeah. So Tom Danley, back in the 1980s, did sound testing on that, and he found that the Great Pyramid was tuned to the key of F sharp, which is supposed to be the key of the entire planet, and then the coffer, the box that's in the that's in the King's Chamber, is tuned to the key of A. So the first time I went to Egypt, I brought with me tuning forks and a chromatic tuner, and tested this out. And sure, we're in there. Yeah, we're in there doing sacred ohms, and like from the antechamber, do the sacred ohm, and also it's coming up F sharp, and the tuning fork is like vibrating in my hand. And same thing with the box in the King's Chamber. It was A. So I was like, okay, I tested it out. There we go.
That's cool, though. That is really cool. Has anybody tried this in some of the other pyramids, like the Pyramid of Saqqara, for example? Because I know that a lot of the chambers out in all of Saqqara, there's tombs open and such. Has anyone tried anything?
Yeah, I don't know if they've done any at Saqqara. I don't know if they've done any testing with acoustics. But yeah, you have like a city, an underground city there at Saqqara, with all the passages and everything there. And I think there's something to be said for all the tunnels and the underground cities and this sort of thing, which is one of the reasons why I date a lot of these things much older. You even look at places like in Turkey, like Derinkuyu and this sort of thing, where the Hittites are supposed to be on the run from the Phrygians, and all of a sudden they spend all this time digging out this underground city to hide. Which, if you're on the run, I don't know where you find time to dig an underground city. Yeah. Doesn't make any sense. So again, this is like places that have been repurposed, and we do find, okay, with that last great pole flip, we find this outburst of things like artwork. In caves, where we find a lot of the cave art about 42,000 years ago. So people were having to live underground because the pole flip, and if you can believe this, but it's true, you can find the published papers, they got a lot of this information off of ancient trees in Australia. And they were able to,
that's interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting. They're able to figure out that the Earth's protection had gotten down to about 6 to 8%. So, if you went outside during the day, you were getting absolutely fried. You
mean like the magnetic field?
Magnetosphere, yeah. It's the magnetic shield of the Earth got down to about 6 to 8%. Yeah,
because ours is down majorly right now. And Dolly talks a lot about this. And all the ETs told her that we're at the end of another iteration, and we're facing these same sort of challenges that we're faced.
And people have talked about the possibility of another flip coming here soon. Very well could be. So, so they would have been seeing like massive auroras and things like this. They would have had to stay inside a lot. So, you find all of these crazy, labyrinthine, complexes there underground. So Saqqara is one of those locations that has this sort of thing. We even look at of all places, the Valley of the Kings like this, that there's a possibility, because it's out in the middle of who in the world's going way the heck out there to bury it? If you've ever been out to the Valley of the Kings, you absolutely roast. It's crazy how hot it is out there.
Yes.
And you're going to take all the time to dig this stuff out, put these guys in there. There's the tomb of Ramses 5 and 6. And it's like really one of the most ornate tombs there. It's absolutely gorgeous. You go all the way into the sarcophagus chamber. You've got them set up there. If you look off to the right-hand side, there's two things to note. One, a little alien character that nobody's been able to deduce what in the world it is. But he looks like a little alien.
Mhm.
The other thing is,
Mm.
when you're looking all the way to the right-hand side, if you look at all the way to the right-hand side of that wall, you have all this great, glorious artwork. And yet, for some reason, they couldn't be bothered to, everything is nice and smooth and all that, but there's part of the wall that's still like rough, that was never cut out. And the guys are just like they're painting their hieroglyphs and their artwork into this rough spot of wall.
That's so bizarre.
It's
Yeah.
really bizarre. It's like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
If the people who painted it were the same people who carved out the tomb, why wouldn't they have not just taken out that last little piece so they could continue their artwork? So there are some who believe that the tombs in the Valley of the Kings were actually repurposed as tombs. They came across them and repurposed them.
I've heard
So
that.
maybe painted, yes, maybe painted
That
by
makes
the
a lot more
dynastic
sense.
Egyptians, but not carved out by the dynastic Egyptians.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
That would
Which I
make
think
a
is
lot.
probably what happened with the Great Pyramid as well.
Yeah, because there are those there are ancient Egyptians who do claim that we found them, we didn't build them.
Yes.
So, but of course that all gets discarded. We're not going to talk about it. Again, you never find any texts or at all of the ancient Egyptians building the pyramids. You find pyramids in their texts that we're worshiping the pyramid, we're celebrating the pyramid, all that. They never said we built that thing.
Well, maybe they were as completely ignorant about them as we are today.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, even like Tutmosis
Yes.
IV. Okay. Now he had a massive restoration project of the Sphinx, and
Wow, really?
yeah. Well, that's the whole dream still. He was lying under the Sphinx one day and had this dream that he needed to restore the Sphinx, and so he did. And so that's the whole dream still, his story of that. And this is where they try to attribute the pyramid to Khufu because, and again, that piece of the dream still is broken off, but there's a sketch from like 150 years ago, and it's kind of rough to see, but possibly it says that trying to attribute the all this to Khufu. But again, we know Tutmosis IV restored it, and there are people who believe that he wasn't really talking about Khufu as having originally built this, but that Khufu had also been a great restorer of these monuments. So which kind of again makes sense that if Khufu was just a restorer, why he only has like one little 2-inch statue.
That's true.
Because if he built it, you think.
Well, there's a theory that it was his face put on the Sphinx that eventually they assumed it could have been the head of a jackal.
Again, attributed to the piece of the dream steely that's missing. No, lion. And I know there's this alternate theory of the jackal out there. Right. And here's I'll tell you why it's not. For one, the physics of the snout coming off of it's going to fall. It's just physics just don't work out.
When Napoleon got through with it, it sure would have. Right after his pot shotting it.
Well, actually, Napoleon didn't shoot it. That was actually a lot of people said that, but that's not what happened. I'm not really sure where that. Napoleon actually revered Egypt. He brought scientists and artists and all. This is why we got interested in Egypt again. It was actually because of Napoleon. And he also found the Rosetta Stone and all that. No, it was actually, and I forget the guy's name, but it was like in the 1300s, 1200s, 1300s, something like this. The locals were going to the Sphinx to pray for a better harvest and all that, and he didn't like them praying to the Sphinx. So the thing that you did in ancient times to remove a deity's power was to strip the face. So he took off the nose. This is why you find a lot of Egyptian artwork that's been defaced, is because it was supposed to remove the power. But where were we at?
Well, clearly
the jackal and the lion.
Right, the jackal. Okay. Yeah. So the physics of it, the snout, no. But also the big giveaway is the tail. So also the Sphinx is facing to the east, the jackal, because this is Anubis, and he would guide people into the west, into the afterlife. So there's that. But the tail's the dead giveaway, because every depiction of a jackal that you have of Anubis when he's like crouched down like that, his tail is either straight out or it's straight down, where this wraps around like any other depiction of a lion. Yep.
There we go. There we go. Which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Did you, when you were in the Valley of the Kings, go to Seti's tomb where you saw all the inscriptions with the gray or the UFO and the helicopter and the thing that looked like a Star Wars hovercraft?
That's in Abydos.
Right.
Yeah, I've seen that, the lintel there that has those.
Yeah.
What's interesting about that is, so the traditional academics are like, well, it was plastered over and then recut, and you do find that sort of thing where hieroglyphs are plastered over and recut, and then the stuff falls out, the plaster over time, and then you have these weird shapes and all that sort of thing. The thing is that and there are several hundred that we found that has happened, but none end up looking like that.
That's it was pretty clean.
Yeah, none end up looking like that. So Muhammad has an interesting theory on this where for me, the jury's still out. But he has an interesting theory where he says, it was plastered over, but it was cut like this deliberately so that when it was removed, it would look the way it does now. So I don't know. The jury's still out for me. The thing for me about Abbott, there's so much going on. You have that. You have one of the largest King's List, and really the most beautiful version of the King's List that's there. You have Stargates all over this building. Each one of the 7 chapels is labeled as a Stargate. You go into the Hall of Osiris, which has a fantastic depiction of the raising the Jed pillar on the Egyptian New Year. And there's 3 Stargate chambers in there. You go to the Hall of Ptah Soker. There's a couple more Stargate chambers in there. It's loaded.
Yeah, which is extraordinary. Do you include that like as part of your Egyptian tour? Like
That's part of the tour. Yep.
Oh boy.
We even go into the it's an off limits to the public, but Muhammad, again, he's been doing the tours there for over 25 years, and he was smart when he was younger. And he was trying to get into some of these places. The old guard was like, no, you're not getting in. So Muhammad made friends with all the younger guys. Well, the old guard has now since retired, and the young guys, the guys who were young, are now in power. And so he's buddies with all of them. So we go to a place. We go to a place like Abydos, and Muhammad just goes, "Hey, Mahmoud, can we get into the room of ships?" "Oh, yeah. Unlock." And there we go. We went to the room of ships.
See, that's investment right there.
Yep. So we get a lot of special access that others don't because of that.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful.
Well, one thing that's interesting to me is, the placement, the geographic location of the Great Pyramid was clearly put there because of the, the declination and the longitude, right? Yeah. So have people looked at other pyramids around the world to see if they have any geographic significance in terms of their placement?
Some of these pyramids line up really, really well. I'm trying to think which one which one in South America, but a number of these pyramids line up perfectly, which is incredible. And other sites of power like Angkor Wat and these other locations that a lot of these line up with. Been doing a lot of people who have been following my YouTube channel will remember that this past summer I had a series of interviews and presentations with Gary Osborne, and he's done a lot of work on the Rendlesham UFO case, and the numbers that came out of that, one of them is the Giza Plateau, and just the alignments that he's been able to put together out of that. You have between the Giza Plateau, you got the Sphinx there. There's alignments to the Azores, which is another one of the proposed locations of the capital of Atlantis, and just other spots in the world. It's just, it's pretty incredible.
Is the Great Pyramid the biggest pyramid that we know of?
It's not. Actually, Cholula in Mexico is. It's actually bigger than the Great Pyramid. As far as like size, the Great Pyramid is taller, but Cholula is like has a bigger base. And that one is more like there were pyramids built on top of pyramids, built on top of pyramids with that one over time. And when the Spaniards came in and just decimated everything, and to them it was looking like a hill at the time. So they built this monastery or cathedral on the top of it, and then over time they deduced, oh, wait a minute, we actually built this on top of a pyramid. So it's kind of bizarre to look at it, because here's this all this excavation work that's been done in this massive pyramid, and then there's this there's temple on top, or the cathedral.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, you'd think that historians would be right on top of trying to rewrite history with all of this, and I guess they're trying, but once the history books are written, they want to
mainstream the narrative. Right?
Yeah, there's a certain narrative that they're trying to hang on to, and yeah, it's a shame. We were talking about that earlier. There's that the narrative is what's bringing people there now. You have pride and ego. You have some, and people have been interviewed before on this sort of thing of, okay, that this is the truth. Why do you not? Well, a couple other reasons. They wrote all these books on it, so now all their books would be irrelevant. Well, to me, I'm just writing the book. But also, one of the things that comes out of this is, well, that would mean the last 40 or 50 years that I've spent doing all this research means that I was wrong. And it's like, again, that's kind of pride and ego, because to me it's not that you were wrong. It's you were working with the information you had at the time. We look back now at our predecessors from like 100 years ago, and you can look at them and you could say, okay, they were wrong. They had some crazy beliefs, and their deductions that they made, were a little goofy. But really, that's what we built. Our modern era.
Look at Copernicus. In terms of
they were stepping stones for us, just like we are the stepping stones for the next generation. So all the information that we're putting together now, I don't doubt a lot of it's going to be disproved or whatever, but it will at least get the next generation thinking, take the work that we've done now and take it to the next level. So sure, some things I don't doubt that I have right, some things I don't doubt that I have wrong, but it gives something for people to work off of. And I could not have gotten here, and my colleagues and you guys could not have gotten here without the people that came before us. So
I wonder if there's stuff hidden, perhaps the Vatican or the Smithsonian or in private hands that would answer a lot of these questions.
Oh yeah,
that's a whole other show. But, I mean, I look at things like, for example, Göbekli Tepe, where there's just information. I mean, and you may hit a roadblock like that one day, that there's information that maybe they just don't want known. When you have, 3-letter organizations that starts with a W, just saying, out there, that has a branch of it donating a whole lot of money to plant a bunch of trees over one of the oldest archaeological structures pretty much in the world. That's not a good idea. Tree roots are just going to destroy it. Say, well, it's for the future generation. It's like, okay, but now they've removed the trees and they're going around to the back of the structure, and they're finally starting to do more archaeology.
Yeah, I saw that they had started, which is great that they've started to do more.
Yeah,
and because they've talked before that what they had previously uncovered was only about 5% of the entire site. Right. So what more?
That's insane.
Yeah, and what's great about Göbekli Tepe, so for the redating of the Sphinx by Schock and West back in the early 90s, one of the things that the opponents of that kept saying, they kept saying, well, show us a potsherd. It's like, well, we talked about the restoration work by Tutmosis IV. Before. Don't you think he would have swept up around there? So ancient potsherds from before Tutmosis IV probably are not going to exist.
Yes.
But the other thing was that, well, we don't have monumental structures that are that old, because they were proposing that was like at least 10,000 years old. We don't have monumental structures that are that old. Oops, Göbekli Tepe comes out of the woodwork, and it's older than that. So it'll be interesting as they go down further. Will they find structures that are even older? And really, when it comes to like dating these things, I mean, you can't date the stone. So you have to date any organics that you come across. So that means you're banking on they've been leaving organic litter there for, since the day that they built it. Again, you're talking about this is a very sacred place to them. Do you not think that they would have cleaned up around here
You
a little
think
bit?
so?
So it's
But
actually.
did they bury it, Mike? Did they rebury it? And could I mean, the
Oh,
ancients.
they did bury it. They did bury it.
Okay,
And,
so
and
how
there's a
much
lot of
got lost
speculation
there?
as to why they would have buried it. But
Yeah.
yeah, the organics that are going to be there, the evidence is
Yeah.
going to be is from the last time that they used it, not the first time. And then
Right.
that's a big question. Why did they bury it? Well, if you look at the time that they're dating this thing, again, the time of the Younger Dryas, which would have been the time that a lot of people were saying was there was a cataclysm. Whether you believe in comet impact theory or massive solar flare or whatever it was, did they bury it in did they know something was going to come? Did they bury it in anticipation of this happening? If we bury it, it will keep it preserved.
Or maybe it wasn't intentionally buried, but it was, a tilt. You know what I mean? The ocean's coming in and putting silt over it. I mean, there's still so much to learn. Has anyone ever tried to use psychic means like remote viewing or just psychic ability to get answers on the pyramids?
I mean, I've heard,
it all reliable.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of some people doing that, and basically they get visions of some of the ceremonies and things like that at the site. I don't recall specific stories offhand, but I know people have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think oh, sorry, Preston. Go ahead.
Yeah, it seems like it would be an avenue worth going down because at least it's not like Mars where you can't really go and check things out, or Oumuamua or the Atlas Comet. I heard all kinds of remote viewers saying ridiculous things about that, which you're certainly welcome to do, but you're never going to be able to verify it.
Right. Yeah.
At least with Egypt, so much of it is intact. I mean, obviously there's pieces missing from the Grand Pyramid, but the energy speaks for itself. Your wife could probably get in there and write a book.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, she's doing a lot, and we're in the process of co-writing a book together and all that.
Oh, there we go.
Actually, it's mostly her at this point. She's fantastic, but we say that there's so much. Look at all these, but really, it's a very, very small fraction of what was there. And even though we got the pyramids, we got all these temples. It's really just a small fraction of what had once existed. So you think about that, like how much grander it really was.
Yeah,
I want to put this on my bucket list to try to OBE and explore, because you can look back in time during OBEs.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it's not easy to do unless you're really good at it. I'm not quite that good, but it's worth a try because I'm fast. This is on my bucket list. I need to know what's going on here.
there are amazing remote viewers that can probably tap in there as well, but it's one of those things like, you just have to just enjoy it for what it is. And it represents something different for so many people. When you bring groups in there, you're watching people have different experiences, because people tap in differently.
Right.
Like let's do that whole consciousness thing, waking people up and considering new paradigms, new ideas, and opening up a whole new world for them, which is basically what a near-death experience does, or a UFO encounter, or anything that is out of a person's worldview. But so we're approaching towards the end here. Do you want to give people information on how they can contact you and perhaps go take one of your tours?
Well,
again, the notes are in the show notes, the links for you, but
I appreciate that. Yeah, people can find out information about the Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour. Just go to my website, MikeRicksecker.com. You go to the events and tours page, and you'll find it right there. And just kind of click into that. It takes you to a We Travel page. We also have that Kickstarter going on right now for the Stargates of Ancient Egypt film. Would love a couple people to jump on board so get that film finished up. I don't have that link for my website right now. I should. I've just been so busy. But it's all over my social media, so people can just find me on like Facebook and all that, and click into that. Or you can just go to Kickstarter and look up Stargates of Ancient Egypt, and you'll find that there. So those are the big things going on right now.
And when's the next tour?
Yeah, next tour is March 21st through April 2nd. So we're starting on the spring equinox, which is incredible. Yep.
Yes. And is there something specific they should do to prepare for something like that for this experience? Or do you guys have something that you do before just letting them come in? Like, is there any kind of
Well,
prep work?
yeah, I mean, as far as like spiritually, I mean, everybody has their own belief system and all
Mm,
that, which is totally fine. Like I said, people do breath work in there, or maybe do
yeah,
sacred ohms or meditate or what. All that's fine.
yeah.
As far as like getting down into like most of what we do is walking, like walking through the temples and all that.
Right.
But getting into like the subterranean chamber of the Great Pyramid, or like we've gone into the Bent Pyramid and the Red Pyramid, and that which have those. The Bent Pyramid is actually the toughest because it's steeper. Even though the Great Pyramid in Giza, the passage into the subterranean chamber is longer, the Bent Pyramid's deeper.
Mm.
So yeah, if you just make sure that do a little
You
workout
should
with your
be fit. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, you don't have to be, Mr. Athlete or Mrs. Athlete or whatever.
Mhm,
But you might want to make sure if you do want to go, it's optional if you want to go
mhm.
down into those.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just make sure your legs are a little up to snuff, because the first time that I went, oh my gosh, we did the Bent Pyramid day 1, and my legs were feeling it for the next 3 days after that.
Oh, I bet they were just
Mhm.
burning. Yeah.
But that's it, because most everything is walking, like the Great Pyramid. I mean, that's the only part that's tough, is really the going down to the subterranean chamber. Everything else, I mean, you're just kind of walking up and all that,
I've done that.
walking around temples, and yeah.
Yeah. I would have
Well,
loved to have done your tour because I ached for like a week after doing that subterranean. Oh, it was horrific. And I was in really amazing shape.
Mhm.
And I thought, no problem. It was unbelievable. So if you're not fit, you're going to be fit when you're doing my
There you go.
guys.
Yeah. Well, and we always make sure everybody has like a bunch of water, like on the tour bus. We have water, we have snacks. There's even a little coffee bar on the
Very
bus,
nice.
which is great. Yeah. So we
Yeah.
always make sure everybody's taken care of. Mohammed, because it's his and his wife Noha's, it's their tour company, Saba Tours. They have somebody like meet you right at the airport. They basically keep you in like this little tour bubble. So they pick you up at the airport, take you to the hotel, they check you in at the hotel, all of that
Oh, that's
stuff.
just
So, yeah, it
amazing.
was just wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful.
well, it sounds like something everyone should do at least once.
Yeah.
Go visiting there and
It's such a life
going
changing
with you.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a really wonderful opportunity to have someone to help guide you and see the best stuff and go
Mhm.
places where you can't normally go. So
Yeah.
yeah, that sounds like
Absolutely.
all kinds of fun.
Oh, we have a great time. It's such a life changing experience. You make lifelong friends along the way. Heck, I made a life partner along the way. Kate came along on my tour a couple of years ago.
Wow. That
Yeah.
worked out. That'd be a
Yep.
nice connection. There you go. Well, well, the more reason for people to go in,
Absolutely.
meeting other like-minded people.
Dolly says, "I want to go, Preston."
Oh,
Yeah.
I'd love to have you both come along.
That would be
It'd be
fun.
incredible.
All right. Well, any last messages you want to leave for our guests before we have to say goodbye?
Yeah, just keep an open mind about all of this. There's I know a lot of people talk about it's all pseudoscience or whatever, and it's like the pseudoscience of yesterday became the science of today. So yeah, keep an open mind about it, and just love each other, guys. Help support each other, and it's already tough enough in this world. So we're all here for each other.
Well put.
I love
Well
it.
put.
Well,
So,
yeah, thanks so much, Mike.
Well, thanks for having me back. I
Truly
appreciate it.
appreciate it. We're gonna have to have you back on. I know you've got
Anytime.
all kinds of stuff to share we didn't even get into, your ghost research and all other kinds of stuff. I do want to give a shout out to all of you guys for joining us tonight. We truly appreciate it. We really appreciate you guys who were able to donate. Thank you, Namaste and Olivia Escamilla, Og UK. Absolutely appreciate it. Oguzan, every one of you, absolutely thank you for joining us. It's just awesome that you were able to share your time with us. So, all right, Michelle, I guess take us out.
Hey, well, thank you all for joining us tonight. Big thank you, of course, to Mike for joining us. Big thank you to all of you in the chat room. Big thank you to United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast, 107.7 FM from New Orleans. Huge thank you to Carnation. And we'll see you all next week with the real Dolly and Preston. Good night.